Hi guys! In this video we're gonna give you a tour of our 37-foot bluewater sailboat, Skua. These boats were designed by Bob Perry in the USA and they were built in Taiwan. The T-37s have a really good blue water reputation and many of them have been built since the first models were made in 1975. Many people ask us if Skua is made of wood, but in fact she's made of thick fiberglass and she's a cutter rig with a full keel.
At the front of this beautiful boat we've got two sails. We've got the staysail and the Yankee, both on furlers. The Yankee is a new sail that we put on the boat ourselves, and that's right at the end of the bowsprit, and then the staysail comes down to the stem at the front of the boat. Our main anchor is down at the moment, bedded in this sand, so we can't really show you it, but it's a 27 kilo, 60 pound Manson Supreme. It's a size up from what we had on Kittiwake, and it's perfectly sized for this boat, still a little bit oversized, which is what we like. The boat has a second bower anchor as well, which is another Manson Supreme, but that one's only 16 kilos, but it's easy to handle from the dinghy, but isn't really big enough to be used, in our opinion, as a main anchor. To handle the anchoring gear, we have this manual windlass. It's original from the boat, so it's 40 years old and it still works incredibly well. It's really robust and solidly built. I think it's either a Simpson Lawrence or a copycat made in Taiwan of that windlass. And it's got two speeds, so one speed is really good for like cranking up really heavy stuff. We just set it in the highest speed because it's still more than enough for picking up the anchor and chain. It's really easy to use, and it was really easy to like take apart and service as well because it's really simple and it's much easier than picking up the chain by hand like I used to do on Kittiwake. The anchor rode that we've got at the moment is about 30 meters of 8mm chain, and then this anchor plat, I think we've got another 20 meters of that, which is not as much as I'd like. I'd quite like to go to 50 meters of chain, especially for when we hopefully go across the Atlantic. I think in the Caribbean it would be quite important to have more chain, but we just can't afford it at the moment, so this is what we're using for now, and then eventually hopefully we'll upgrade that.
This is our dinghy. It's a aluminium lightweight rib from Zodiac called a Cadet, and it's 2.4 meters long and she's super light, I think around 30 kilos from memory, and we absolutely love her. It's very easy to handle, take on board and put down into the water, drag up a beach. We also like the fact that she has a solid hull, so we're fairly safe from any rocks or anything like that. We also have an outboard for her. It's a Yamaha 5 horsepower and we mount it on our stern rail.
The mainsail is under the stack pack that Eleanor built. It's got 3 reefs in the main, so really good for offshore sailing. It's a pretty big mainsail. I think lots of Tayanas have reduced the size of their mainsail to reduce weather helm. We might think about that if we ever get a mainsail in the future, but so far this one's working great. And then the lines come down to here. The halyards for the staysail and the Yankee, so the two head sails, both terminate at the bottom of the mast, which is good because you don't really need to adjust them as much. And then the outhaul and reef 3 for the main both terminate here as well, and the rest of the lines run back to the cockpit. We also have this life raft. I think it's a 6-man one and it's really heavy. I wouldn't want to rely on Eleanor being able to throw this over the lifelines, but yeah, hopefully if the worst happened we'll be able to do something with it. These are the boom gallows. They're not on every boat, especially modern boats tend not to have them. It's quite a kind of old-fashioned feature. You can rest the boom on it when obviously it's not being used, the main's not being used, which we really like because then you can release the tension on the topping lift and you don't get the humming that you sometimes get with topping lifts. It's also quite a good safety feature because it stops you being able to drop the boom. If you forget that the topping lift's loose and you just let the halyard go, then you can't drop the boom onto the people in the cockpit. This will protect them. So this is our cockpit. Obviously it's an aft cockpit boat. It's quite a small cockpit designed more for sea safety, so being offshore, having a smaller cockpit means you're less likely to fly around, and if the boat was swamped with a big breaking wave over the back, then it wouldn't hold that much water. There's only really the footwell, which drains really well. So it's not really designed for sort of entertaining lots of people, but it's perfectly sized for the two of us. There's great space for us both to lie down, certainly a lot more comfortable than Kittywait's cockpit. Here at the back of the boat we have the wind vane. This is a hydrovane model made in England and it's an auxiliary rudder type. So when it's in use it has a plywood air vane sticking up from here which senses the direction of the wind, and then that turns an auxiliary rudder which is right down at the back of the boat. As well as being a wind vane, the rudder acts as a backup rudder, so if anything happens to the boat's main rudder then you can actually steer the boat using this little tiller on the front of the hydrovane, which we've used and the previous owner used a lot as well, and it works really well because the rudder is so far at the back it gets a lot of leverage on the boat and can be really good for manoeuvring and also when you're out at sea. You can also mount an electronic tiller pilot onto the wind vane rudder, which we do have one. We also have a built-in Raymarine autopilot which works with the hydraulic steering, and then that's controlled from the helm. So this is the helm. As I said, it's hydraulic steering. It's not original, this has been put in by the previous owner. Originally it would have had a worm gear steering which would have come out of here with a little wooden wheel on it. The hydraulic steering has been a bit hit and miss for us. We have had a few problems when we take the boat off of autopilot. Sometimes the wheel steering doesn't engage, so I'm not particularly enamoured to it. We do also have a tiller for the boat which acts as an emergency backup, and I'm toying with the idea of just going for tiller steering full time, but we'll see how it works out with this pedestal, whether we can fix the issues. And as I said before, the Raymarine autopilot works from here. So far it's been great. It can either steer the boat to a course or it can steer the boat by the wind with the wind sensor on the top of the mast. And we found that's really useful, especially in following seas. When the stern of the boat moves around, you can turn that on and it makes sure that you don't accidentally jibe. This is the emergency tiller. It slots onto the top of the rudder post right at the back. Down here is the control panel for the engine. We have a Volvo MD2040D that's from I think 2004 or 2005, installed by the previous owner. It's got about 800 hours on it. Although Volvo itself has a bit of a bad reputation, these ones were actually made by Perkins, and a good thing about that is that the Perkins parts are much cheaper. To protect the cockpit from spray and the wind when we're at anchor, we have the spray hood which Eleanor made, and then to protect us from the sun we have the bimini which rolls out from the back arch and connects to the spray hood, or we can connect it to the boom gallows. If you want to know more about the canvas work that Eleanor did for the boat, then check out our boat refit videos. One of them is dedicated entirely to the canvas work.
Down here we have our instruments. So wind speed here, true and apparent doesn't really work, so we just go off apparent. This should be the speed log. Unfortunately we've tried to fix it 5 times and it just won't work. We're happy going with speed over ground. And over here is the depth sounder. The boat also has a radar, but we don't use it much, although we have played around with it and it's really fun to do that. Most of our lines are led back to the cockpit. They all go through clutches, and then we use the winch in case we need to winch them in. So between the lines that we have on top of the cabin and the two Yankee sheets on the sides of the boat, we can do pretty much anything from the cockpit in safety. I think the only thing we can't do is reef 3 and obviously raising the spinnaker, which, I mean, we don't need to be super safe to do that. And that's very well set up for us. We really love it. We also have these organizers which we found extra useful because our cabin is very short, so if we don't arrange them like this, they're all over the cockpit and it's a very big mess. Come on inside and I'll show you down below. As you come in on the port side, we have our galley, and starting from here we have a fridge which is quite a lot bigger than our old one on Kittiwake, so it extends from here to here and you can fit quite a lot of stuff in there. It's got a cooling plate at the back, and what we usually do is we set it on auto, and that means that every now and then the fridge will freeze the cooling plate, and that will keep the food cool for quite a long time, and then it will switch off until it needs re-freezing. Next to the fridge we have a cool box, which is basically kept slightly cool, so maybe 14 degrees, thanks to the fridge which is right next to it, and we keep a lot of fruit and veg in there as well as our booze. Well, we have lots of storage space for fresh food in the galley. There isn't much for long life food. We only have one cupboard, which is this one, and we keep the rest of our food in the saloon. For cooking we have a diesel stove and oven which was already on board when we bought Skua, and we find it works really well. I think one of these is really expensive if you buy it new, so I wouldn't go and buy it myself because I think it's £3,000. But because it's on board, it's actually pretty excellent because we don't need to buy any gas, so we are a one fuel sort of boat. And once I got used to the fact that one side is warmer than the other, then like cooking with it is pretty amazing, and it consumes not much, I think about 10 litres per month, using it for every single meal, so 3 meals a day. Over here we have a double sink with a pressurized water system. But we also have a salt water tap here which is operated by a manual foot pump, which we use to wash our dishes, and then we rinse in fresh water using this spray bottle. This is our nav station and quarter berth area, and I have to say it's the one that we couldn't really refit at all, and we're not very happy with it. It's a bit all over the place really, but it's very functional, so we're not bothering with it while we can sail. We have a chart table over here which holds all of our charts and the extra chart plotter tablet, and as well our logbook. Over here we have a control panel for our instruments. This is the main switch. We have the anchor light, all sorts of the usual stuff, 12-volt sockets, AIS, everything else is controlled by this panel. And this is probably the thing that we find most horrible, but one day we'll get to it, we'll make it nice. Here we have a chart plotter which is a Raymarine C120, and it was already on board, and it is quite an old model, so for us it's going from a tablet where you can use your fingers and go really fast to this. It's actually a downgrade sort of thing, but we kept the really cheap tablet and we use both, so this is really good because it's connected to the AIS which is inside this box, and we can see where other boats are. Over here we have the GPS, and this is the Navtex, which gets sort of essential weather information. We don't use it very much. There used to be an SSB radio over here, but we decided that we didn't need it. Basically, getting the license was way too expensive. It was more expensive than getting a satellite phone, so we'll just do that. So yeah, we'll need to fix that cosmetic thing as well at some point. And over here we have our handheld VHF, which we keep here while we're anchor, but if we need it we'll just keep it in the cockpit. This is our quarter berth. It is really long actually, you can't really see because it's so dark in here, but yeah, Ryan can fit in it, and he's over 6 feet tall, so it's really big, and it's actually quite wide and spacious. And we usually keep just the cruising shoot in here, unless it's a light wind day, in which case it will be up on deck. Under here there's the diesel tank, and it is quite awkward to access it. You have to take everything off to be able to see what's your fuel level. This is our battery monitor, where we keep an eye on our energy consumption and as well how much we're getting from the panel outside. And down here we have the charge controller for our solar panel. This is our saloon, which is very relaxed most of the time, and if it's cold outside we'll eat at the table. This table can be lowered to create a bed. It is not quite a double bed, but almost, and it is actually quite comfy underway, and as well in case we have guests. Under the benches there's lots of storage, which is very useful because we can hide away a lot of stuff like tools and the batteries, for example. And here we have some of our food, which is like morning sort of foods like coffee and biscuits and cereal. Behind me there's lots of cables that are from our hard drives and all the electronics that we need to work and to make the videos. And the same for this one, there's the drone and other stuff in there. I'm not going to open it because it's probably all going to fall out. In the saloon we also have a diesel heater. It's a Taylor's model, it was already on board and it seems to work alright. This is the diesel tank for our heater, and you can be filled from up here. This is our mast. It's a keel stepped one, and it's been replaced in the last 10 to 15 years. Originally Tayana's had wooden masts, even though they are not wooden sailboats, so it is a really good upgrade to have done without spending any money. Under the floorboards where I'm standing, so right in the middle of the boat, there's 2 water tanks which amount to 320 litres of fresh water. Just above my head is a forward opening hatch. It's not original, usually Tayana's have butterfly hatches, but this one is really good for airflow and it doesn't leak like the wooden butterfly hatches. This city is really long, like it's too long for Ryan to stretch into as well, and it opens up to create a generous berth for one person. We usually cuddle up on it to watch a movie, so it's really comfy and we really like it. Just here behind me there's our mini library. It's mainly taken up by our cruising guides and pilot books. Then over here is our food storage. It's probably one of the biggest ones. There's lots of stuff in there. And then here we keep our electronics in use, so cameras and laptops, laptop chargers, anything like that. What we love about this boat is that it's got lots and lots of storage. So there's huge wardrobes like this one which go from my height to the floorboards. They also extend all the way out to the hull, so they're really deep. And so we can keep loads and loads of stuff on the boat. In this one we keep a lot of food, like long life sort of food, like for example flour, and also that's our laundry and our sleeping bags down there. This is where we keep our clothes, so it's a pretty huge wardrobe for a sailboat, and 4 drawers here. This is just where we keep the stuff that is in use. If it's salty clothes, we don't want to mix them up with the clean ones, so that's where it goes. On our port side we have our heads, which opens through this door. The door closes either way thanks to this little latch, and so you can have more privacy if you're getting changed and you have guests in the cabin, or you can make the bathroom bigger. Our heads isn't huge, but it is an improvement from our previous one. So we have all this standing headroom, so both of us can stand and potentially shower in here. The previous owner had this shower head installed, and we have our shower curtain, but we haven't really figured out how the water is going to come out because the floor under the grate has actually been fiberglassed. So yeah, we're not showering inside yet. We think we'd really look into it if we were staying in a place where it is quite cold, whilst we can shower outside at the moment. We have a composting loo, which was given to us by the previous owner because he didn't get around to installing it and he wasn't going to use it. Welcome to our V-berth. I know most people hate V-berths and they have only bad things to say about them, but this one is actually pretty big. I don't think I've ever heard of such a big V-berth on an older 37-foot sailboat. So we feel pretty comfy. The only problem is sometimes I kick Ryan because it obviously gets narrower at the bottom. Even though down here is actually not that high, there's this really nice section at the back where obviously you can see there's enough space for sitting up and reading or watching a movie. So you can prop up your pillows onto this nice wall and yeah, just have a nice relaxing time. These boats should be really good for hot climates because we have a hatch above the bed which is forward opening again, so it should get a nice breeze through. And as well we have these smaller portholes that are round and they should let in quite a good bit of air as well. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed a tour of our little floating home.
If you want to see us refit or sail this Tayana, then subscribe to our channel where there's loads of videos coming up of us going cruising on this boat.
I've got the time to show my love what it's all about.
Eleanor's in fancy dress as Captain Haddock.